Hello world, welcome back to my channel everybody. Today I'm going to be recreating this one interaction that I got from this website that'll be linked down in the description below. But here's the interaction that I'm going to be showing you guys how to build. As you can see, there's a lot of things going on. The video is showing up, that's synced to the text is showing up to the right. As we sort of hover, the background color changes, the text changes, and we also get this nice arrow animation, okay? So there's a lot of things happening in this one specific interaction, but I'm going to walk you guys through it and show you exactly how to do it. Okay, let's just get started. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is change some of the styles here on my body class. So I'll give it a class. I will make the background color black, and I'm also just going to center the text or center anything inside of here. Then I'm going to drag in my list element. Now, let's give it a class, and I'll explain what I want to do. So this is going to be structured in a grid layout. So we're going to have 4 different columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just going to be one row, and there's going to be 4 columns. So here's how we're going to set that up. First, I'm going to get rid of that padding to the side, and also that bullet. So no bullets, no nothing. And then I'll just rid the whole thing of all the list items except for one. But let's go back to the list right here, and I'm going to set display grid. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have 0 gap, so nothing. And it's just going to duplicate these columns until I have 4 of them and get rid of it so there's only 1 row. And then I'm going to give it a width of 100% and a height of 50 VW. Or actually not even that much, 30 VW. And then I want to give it a border, so maybe like 0.2, like a very thin border around of white. Okay, and then let's go into our list item. This is also going to have a class of, you guessed it, list item, a width of 100%, and a height of also 100%, just like that. So it takes up the entirety of our little sort of grid item right here. Now, for our list item, we're also going to give it a border, but only to the side. So it's going to have 0.2 pixels of white border to the side. And then what we also want to do is sort of grab that again, sorry, and make sure that there's flex set on this one so that we can also align it all to the middle. Now, we're also now inside of our list going to first start by making this sort of text right here and this arrow. So I'm going to call that list item title wrapper. If I can spell title right, title wrapper, okay. And it's going to contain the title right here and also this arrow. So title wrapper, it's going to have a width of 100%, but also some padding, so 3 VW of padding to the left and the same thing to the right. Okay, now inside of there we're going to drag in our heading 1, so just place that inside of that, call it list item title, because that's what it is, and I'll just change some of the text around to make it fully white, right? Make sure that the font, I'm not sure what okay, I picked a font called Tahoma, which is already in Webflow, and I'm going to set it to be normal. Just type in some of our text right there. Okay, so we're going to change the size of our text, make it 2 VW so that it sort of changes based on the width of the screen, and then give it a height of the same but a little bit more, so 2.5 VW height. And that's it for our title. Now the next thing is to build this sort of arrow wrapper that we have here. So drag in yet another div, right? This is going to be called list item arrow wrapper. And as you notice, the arrow is sort of housed in this sort of circular container. So that's what we're going to build first, and then we'll put the arrow inside of that. So the arrow has a width and height of, or the wrapper has a width and height of 2VW, and it's set to flex, just so that we can center everything inside of it. And it has a border on the outside of 1 pixel, white, and oh, not just on the right. I realized what I did there. Let's just cancel all this stuff out. 1 pixel on all sides, not just the right. And then we want to increase the border radius a little bit. And to get that perfect circle, something that'll work every single time, is to type in 50%. So that's just going to give you a fully rounded circle all the time. Okay? That's 50%. Now, inside of here, I'm going to drag in my arrows. Now, inside of here, I'm going to drag in my arrow. So, right there. Put that inside of there. Okay. Now, the arrow is also going to have a very specific size. So it's going to be 0.7 VW by the same thing. And that's about it for the arrow. Now, I'm going to, I should probably name it. So list item arrow. And I'm going to give it a combo class of normal. And you'll see why when we make the interaction later. But we kind of need this so that because if you look back to our interaction, we have sort of 2 arrows, right? We have this one that's being pushed off to the side and this one that comes in diagonally, like that. So for that, we need 2 separate arrows. But when we're animating it, we need to give them different classes so that we're able to identify them by their class, okay? So that's our list item arrow with the class normal. So now I'm just going to duplicate that, get rid of that normal class. And what I'm going to do with this next one is, first of all, I'll give it a position of absolute and just rotate it a little bit. So I'll go to 2D and 3D transforms and just rotate it -45 degrees. Okay, and then I'm just going to drag down the opacity. That's all we're doing. We're going to deal with the sort of positioning it down to the corner and stuff later on when we get to our animation. Now, I want to position both the title and the arrow next to each other like they are here. So I'm going to grab the title wrapper and, oh, what did we do there? We forgot to give it a combo class. So let me just go back and okay. Just hitting Control Z a couple times. Okay, now you can see both of them. Now I'll give this a class of diagonal and then I'll change it. Okay, sorry, that was my fault. And rotate, okay, rotate -45 degrees and lower the opacity. Okay, so now to get them to be positioned side by side, we're going to grab the title wrapper and just very simply set a flex, align to the middle, and space between like that. And the reason that the spacing is sort of weird is because our title here has some margin, so let me just get rid of that. There we go. So that is our title wrapper. Now, another thing that we want to put inside of our list item directly is sort of the text that comes in at the bottom right there. So here's how we're going to do that to sort of make sure that it comes in from the bottom. Okay, so we're going to close up the title wrapper and I'm going to drag another div in here. This is going to be called list item description. And it doesn't really need to be a div, actually. Drag in a paragraph element. And this is going to be called list item description. Okay? And inside of here, it's just going to have the same amount of padding. So 3VW to the left, same thing to the right. And it's going to have a width of 100%. And I'm going to just paste that same text in. Okay, and I'm also going to change the text color, and I'm not going to make the text color white in the end, but we'll keep it white for now, and just because we're not even going to see it until when our animation starts, and then the background would be white, so we want to change that color then and not now. So I'll just leave it white so that we can see it now, but later I'll make it black so I don't have to add as many steps to my interaction. But so list item description, and it's going to be set positioned absolutely, and it's not set, as you can see here, it says it's relative to the body, but we want it to be relative to the list item. So we're going to set the list item to have a position of relative. Then we'll grab that description and place it all the way at the bottom. And then what we'll do is just change some of the text settings around. So open sans, 0.9 VW, so we're actually 1.2 VW, 1.1. Same thing for the height. Okay, and then I'll just change the text color to be black so that we don't see it. And then I will also lower the opacity and give it some sort of spacing at the bottom. Okay, so that is sort of the basic structure of our list item. I'm going to duplicate this item a couple times and just sort of change the text around so that we can add our different videos and images. And this last one is going to say, okay. And then for our last sort of item over here, our last list item, this is going to house all of our videos. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to grab, actually just duplicate this list item one last time, but we're going to get rid of anything inside of it. We're just left with this list item right here. And in this last one, we don't need a lot of things actually. All we need is a background video. So let me just grab that, place that inside of here. Now our background video is going to be called list item video. And it's just going to have a width of 100% and a height of 100%. I'm going to get rid of that play pause button and I'll just upload a video. If I can find it, there we go. Okay, now while this video is transcoding, I'll actually upload some of the other ones too. This is going to be video 1, 2, 3, and I'll just upload. Okay, let's let those upload. And then what we also want to do is while the image is sort of, or while nobody has hovered over any of these boxes, as you can see the sort of image is rotating, so we can bring that in too. So I'll just grab that here, call it list item image rotate, and it's just going to take up maybe 50% of the space. And our video is going to have to be positioned absolutely because we want it to sort of appear over this list image rotate. So just make sure that it's positioned absolutely. And I'm also going to decrease the width all the way down to 0% because as you can see, our animation consists of the width sort of increasing. So that's what we're doing for our video, but for this image rotate, this is all the styles that we need there. Now I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times. This is going to be called list item video 1. And for our second one, I'm going to replace the video with our second person, change the background class on that one. And for our last one, just do the same thing. Okay. Now, the last thing that I guess I sort of forgot to do was give this, introduce that sort of background, the white background element that sort of increases its width as we sort of hover, right? So in our list item, I'm going to grab yet another div. This one's going to be called list item BG for background. It's going to take up the full thing, and it's going to have a background color of white. Now we're going to position it absolutely, okay, and then we're going to decrease the width all the way down to 0%. But before I do that, what I want to show you is that I'm going to position this absolutely, right, but I'm going to give it a z-index of 1, and I'll position everything else, so our title wrapper, for example, higher. So this is going to have a z-index of 2, 3, that should be working. Okay, it is working. Okay, it's because the text color is white, but trust me, it is working. If we change the text color to black, you should be able to see it there. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that's working, and we're going to do the same thing for our description here. Make sure that it's set to a z-index of 2, so that it's higher than our background here. And then I'm just going to decrease the width all the way down to 0%. Okay, now I'm going to copy this inside all of our other list items, make sure that they all have the z-index too. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple things happening. So if I just pull up one of these and mouse hover, I'm going to call this animation list item image hover in. Okay, and the first thing that we want to do is make sure that all the stuff that sort of like has a starting position is ready and set to go. So things that need a starting position is our arrows. So let's get started with that one. I'm going to go down here into our arrow wrapper and grab our second arrow, right? Because that's the one that starts out in this sort of position down here, right? And then it sort of zooms up to the top. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to grab that arrow and I'm going to move it a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. So a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. No, what am I saying? A little bit to the left and a little bit to the bottom. Okay? And it's going to be positioned like that. And essentially, that's our initial state. So that's how we want it to start. And then we also want it to be rotated negative 45 degrees. Okay? And then when our animation actually starts to begin, what we want to happen is we want this arrow to be moved. So first I set it to 0 VW and 0 VW, so it's original state. And then I also want the opacity to increase on this so that we can actually see it. Okay? But before all this happens, so we're going to grab our first arrow now, and we're going to move that first arrow out by 2 VW so that it's also gone. So then we'll place all of these outside, and now if we look, okay, so that arrow is leaving and this arrow is coming in. Now we can still see that arrow out there, so here's how we're going to sort of fix that. I'm going to hit save over here, and I'm going to go back to my arrow wrapper and make sure that it's set to overflow hidden. Let's go back and continue messing with our animation. Okay. So like that, that's what's happening, right? And then what we want to sort of happen is we want the background. So if I grab the background right here, we want the size of that background to increase. So take up the whole thing 100%. And then once the size of that background has increased, we want the title to change its sort of color. We want it to become black. So now if we change, okay, we should probably place that after, like that. Okay. And the reason that we can't see our arrow wrapper here is, let me see and go back here. Oh, okay, so grab our arrow wrapper and make sure that the background color is set to black. And now if we go in and check it out, it should work. Okay, there. So that's our text that's working. Now we're just going to bring up this text from the bottom. So grab our description. And I'm just going to move it up 0 VW. No, not from the X, so from the Y, and make sure that our initial state for this, so let's go back here, set the initial state for this description, and make sure that was maybe negative 2 VW, or positive 2 VW actually. Now if we sort of, okay, make sure to increase the opacity as well. Opacity, then the moving. Now if we see, okay, so that part's working. Now the only thing left to do is make sure that our sort of video background pops up as this is popping up. So save that. I'm going to make, actually no, wait, that's not right. No, delete this. Okay, I called it something different. Should not be called image. Okay, image, there. We're going to save that, and I'll go back into my designer here. And what we want to happen is we want the first one here to be this first video to also sort of increase its size as we hover on this one. So I'm going to grab this first list item again, set up a different hover animation, and I'm going to call this, or actually, even before we do that, the first thing to do is let's test this out. Okay, so that's working. Let's create a sort of hover out animation too. Delete that. Okay, so let's make a hover out animation. So list item hover out, and for this one, what we're going to do is just sort of reverse exactly what we did last time. So first thing is grab that arrow, right, and we're just going to move it back. So the first arrow will first move back, so it'll move back negative 1.5 EW and 1.5 EW here. And then our first arrow will be moved back negative 2 VW, right? So that's our arrows, and then the opacity of this first one will also be decreased, okay, like that. And then what we want to do is get that background size to go down. So make sure that that goes down to 0%. Change the color of the title here. So text color, make that white again. Grab our sort of description. First, we're going to reduce the opacity of that one, and then we're going to move it. So move it back down negative 2 VW, 2. And then I believe that's it. Let's save and let's try it out. Okay, so everything's working except this arrow is sort of going way far out. So let's fix that. Okay, so our second arrow over here, the one with the normal class, maybe should just be moved. Oh, it should be moved 0 VW back to its original spot. Now let's see if that works. Okay, so that works. Now all we need to do is get our sort of video to load at the exact same time as this is sort of hovered on. So we're going to create another trigger, hover, call it list item 1, hover in. And when this happens, we're just going to grab our list item video 1, and we're just going to bring up the size to 100%, save it, and then when we hover out, we're going to start yet another one. So list item all hover out, because they're all going to have the same reaction when we hover them out. So size, make sure that this selects list item video and not just 1, 2, or 3. And then make sure that the size is back down to 0%, like that. So now if we play it, okay, so the video, and then as you hover out, it goes away. Okay, when we hover in, so when I go, let me go back to this animation for the first one, and I also kind of want to make sure this image just lowers its opacity, so I'll do that. Okay, now let's see. And we want it to come back in when we hover out. So grab the image, rotate, and sort of make sure that the opacity comes back in. I'm actually going to play this at the top, so I'll put everything after this one, like that. And I want the same thing to happen here. Sort of make sure that the image rotate happens first. Okay, save that. And in our hover out, we actually want this to happen last, so I'm just going to place that at the end. Now if we save it and try. Okay, so that works. Now we just have to set up the same interaction in all of these, which shouldn't be so hard. So for this one, hover in and same thing, hover out. And then we're going to create another mouse hover interaction. We're just going to duplicate this list item 1, and I'm going to call it list item 2 hover in. For this one, just make sure that it's selecting list item video 2, and then the same sort of one for all of them, the hover out. Okay, now let's just do this for this last one here. So hover in, and hover out, and then we'll just close that and make another trigger and duplicate this one, rename it list item 3, hover in, if I can spell, so list item 3, hover it in, okay, and just change that there, make sure that says list item video 3, save, and then the same thing for sort of hovering out. And now we pause and see. Okay, so our animation is working fine. Now I'm just going to mess with some of the sort of easing settings to get that like quick sort of animation. So on our list item, hover in, I'm going to grab all of these and make sure that the easing says ease in out. Now if we sort of look at it, it happens really quickly. Just going to change the duration to make it maybe 0.3 seconds, like that. And then for the hover out, I'll give it out court or out quad, I think. Okay, so now let's see. Let's preview. Okay, now as you see, this isn't in sync with sort of the animation that we're doing here because it sort of doesn't have the same easing. So let's go fix that. So on list item 1, hover and make sure that says ease in out. Same thing for the second one. Ease in out. And the same thing for the last one. Ease in out, and make sure this is set back to the first one. And then for the all, hover out, make sure that one says out quad. Okay, now let's see. Okay, this is working perfectly, I think. That's it for this interaction video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below, and follow me on Instagram. Okay, that's it. Bye.